I think, you talk about commercial and creative. That's really exactly what it was that we did. We ran a business based balancing commercial and creative the entire time. I would say that on the scale of a creative, you are a commercial one. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that. Tell me where you think you are on the scale and why.
I often talk about this scale of, you can be a creative and you're a pure artist, and that likely is you probably went to fine art school or you did something where you were trained in the arts. I barely finished high school. I definitely didn't go to universities, and I always wanted to make money from my craft. I think so much in society is we, profile the creative as the bohemian or the drifter or kind of the starving artist archetype. And I really wanted to make money from my creativity and wanted a vocation in that. So when I talk about being on the commercial creative end of things, I'm a creative at heart, and I think that when I'm looking for support, I'm looking for that technical support and kind of someone who is a creative commercial. So if you look at the hierarchy of each of those, so I definitely sit on the more commercial end of things. And when Lucinda kind of came into the business, we definitely treated at Samantha Wills the brand and the business as separate entities. So we'd make decisions on what might have been a brand decision, or sometimes you have to make things that are purely a business decision, and those two entities often intertwined. And I guess Lucinda, you came in on the commercial side of things and joined us as to oversee the entire business. How do you approach that when having to make the revenue and make the budgets, but also work with someone like myself who doesn't really talk about budgets that much? How do you manage those two, and what does that process look like in your role?
There's a couple of things, but I think ultimately you always have to be mindful of balancing your creative integrity with the commercial output. And I think that from a brand, sorry, I've just switched that up, but for your brand integrity with the commercial output, I think that you can't lose sight of either at all in the same time. It's a long game. Brand building is a long game, and it's all about brand integrity and how you reinvest back into that. I think that staying true to brand and not veering is when the commercial success follows. And I think it's when you're really authentic to brand.
There could be a lag time then, because you do have to invest in often the brand first.
Definitely.
To then get the revenue outcome.
Yeah, definitely. But I think really, what it comes back to, I think when you're trying to drive a commercial output and outcome, you need to protect the creative at all times as well. So my job really was to make sure
like
you...
an endangered species. You've got to protect the creative.
is that you, pretty much,
It is a bit, because we creatives can be a bit sensitive, we can be a bit, and I think a good commercial partner will kind of come in and almost read the emotion, or be like, oh, they're a bit this way, and it is a bit like you got to coddle them a little bit, and I say that as one.
I think you've got your roadmap, and then you've got how you deliver that. You need to have high EQ, and you have to keep your eyes on the prize, but you need to take everyone along on the journey. Right. Whilst delivering a vision of a creative
You're kind of guiding the ship, really.
You're guiding the ship, but you're delivering on a vision. But you also need to make sure that any feedback, whether it be a bit spiky or a bit unwanted, or maybe not, news that you're not really wanting to hear, you need to make sure you're delivering that in the right way at the right time.
Well, I think so often we see, in bigger brands, like with the creative director of Chloe, or kind of these big brands, we see the creative director as the powerhouse that kind of came in and redirected, but really there's someone behind them very much supporting them. Their name's not usually mentioned, but it is such a partnership.
And it comes back to support. I think that's ultimately what it is supporting the vision, supporting the individual, which actually probably leads on to my next question. In your first book of Golden Dust, you talk about making mistakes, and my job really was embracing mistakes. Failures are findings. We have to lean into that in a professional sense and learn from that. You talk a lot about mistakes and in the book. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what that meant for you?
I think definitely and if you've read of Golden Dust, you'll know this story already, but I think my biggest mistake in my career, most of my career has been in that business, but in my entire career, the biggest mistake I made was probably when the brand had found its place in the sun in, I would say it's around 2008, 2009. We're very much known for this bohemian aesthetic. It was statement pieces, it was bright colors, it was burnished metals, a lot of layering. And we just had such relationships with a David Jones, with our major retail partners, our online businesses, everything had lined up. And there was a formula to that, and it was very authentic to who I was. It was very much my personal story around, Bondi markets to, then New York. So then basing that first year over in New York, I instantly, spent time out in the marketplace. And I would say that our consumer, and I explain our consumer as tier 1 and tier 2. So a tier 1 consumer to me is someone who's setting trends. So they're out there, making these kind of brave style choices, but they're very trend loyal. Whereas our consumer was very brand loyal. So she wasn't really leading the trends, but she was very loyal to us, to what we were doing. So we know every season, we know what she's buying, and her mentality is, if Samantha Wills is doing it, we're buying it. So our consumer was very brand loyal, which I think as a commercial creative is the best type of consumer to have. So I go over to New York and I'm out in these like top tier 1 stores, like a Barney's, Bergdorf, like really high-end stores that we just would not stock in the equivalent in Australia. And instantly I look around and no one's doing turquoise, no one's doing, burnished metals. It's all petite, it's fine, it's polished metals. There's, hardly any color. And I kind of look around and I can hear my imposter syndrome like in my ear, just being like, well, you're not even really a real designer. You didn't go to university, you didn't study design. Look at what everyone else is doing. Like, you should probably be doing this if you want to be considered a real designer. And I remember going home after kind of doing these store visits and sitting at my desk, and it was almost like my ego and my imposter syndrome were sitting on either side of me, both whispering to me. But my intuition was whispering to me much quieter. So these guys actually were yelling. They were yelling at me that, you're not a real designer. And in one season, I took everything that was authentic and working with the brand and I flipped it on its head. So I did, I sent the design sheets through to my tech assistant at the time. I was like, we're not doing any turquoise this year, remove any statement stones. We're doing all, finer pieces, all polished metals. And, coming off a season like we did, with our time in the sun, a retailer, for example, like David Jones would be like, gosh, we've had so many successful seasons with you. We're going to invest in what you do. So they're like, all right, if Samantha Wills is doing fine, polished, non-bohemian collection, we're going to back that, because last season, when it was all those things, went really well. Obviously, it's no shock that it didn't work. It was an absolute disaster. So they over-ordered because they were like, last season went so well, we're over-ordered. So at the end of the day, we're left with, a complete black eye from having to take all this stock back from retailers. The consumer's confused because they're like, this is not the Samantha Wills that we bought into. And not only did I do that to the design language, but I did it to our brand, to my bio, to the brand bio. I was like, no one knows who a Port Macquarie is. No one knows what Bondi markets are. Like, get rid of all these authentic things. And then you're kind of left with this shell of something that you're not. So there was this lack of authenticity. So what I really had to do in that moment was sit in this rubble, and it actually felt like I was sitting in a construction site because I just demolished this brand in one season. Very much around, having such a loyal following to that time. They so graciously allowed me to make that mistake, and we turned it around pretty quickly to get back to our authenticity. We bounced back from that, but if we didn't have that brand loyalty kind of sitting there, that would have completely bankrupted us. So I think, to me, imposter syndrome is something that has, it's very easy to remember. It was my imposter syndrome that did it, and I do look at it as like an entity, because I often allow imposter syndrome to lead the conversation, like I did in that instance. So, but what that really did force me to do, and I think any time when you have such a stumble, if it could be so graciously called that, it was much worse, but when you have a stumble, you have the ability or the opportunity to evolve as a brand. And what that really allowed us to do was look at what worked. So I had to kind of go back to the why and look back at what I wanted to take forward with the brand, and take those pieces and be like, okay, but where are we also going? And I think that was the pivotal moment for the brand, when it really took a step up a notch. And that came after me taking literally a sledgehammer, not intentionally, to it. I think when we talk about evolution is so needed in brand too. Sometimes we think that we get onto this winning thing and we're like, all right, let's just drive this home. But I think any brand that's not evolving is almost dead in the water. And I think one of the biggest things, and just to preface, that huge mistake I made was before Lucinda's time, so I didn't hand that over to her. She didn't inherit that big mess. But one of the big things, I don't know if you guys remember the hand-carved wooden boxes that everything used to come in, which they were a big part of our early years and kind of what really solidified us as a brand. And one of the things that with evolution that Lucinda was responsible for was making the decision, do we phase those out? And if we do, why do we do that? If you look at the brand in the entity, when it was just me on a market table, then I kind of get a few people around me, then I demolish it, then we kind of get to evolve a little bit. Then Lucinda kind of came in when we were at a stage when we were ready for someone as commercially savvy as Lucinda to take it to that next level. So I guess, Luce, do you want to talk about that strategy and that decision making around making changes like that and how that was implemented?
Definitely. I think talking about brand and commercial, creative and commercial, and the journey that a brand goes on over time, the boxes were actually key to the success of that cult following in the beginning. I think that's really what made people feel like they were collecting. It was a real brand experience. It put it on the map. It was the point of difference. It was the hardest logistical thing to actually execute from a practical sense.
So we would make them in India.
Yes.
Most of the jewelry was made out of China, some in India, mainly China.
Yes.
Then we'd have to sea freight.
They were hand carved. There was such a beautiful artisanal story behind them.
So that we'd sea freight the boxes in.
Yeah.
My business partner, who's kind of the third monkey in this trilogy, he was just like, what the fuck are we, like, wooden boxes, we're shipping them around the world. And it was just logistically, and as the brand grew, we were ordering container loads full of these boxes.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the creative desire, we felt that the boxes might have served what we needed them to do, but how do we take the brand to we can't be shipping boxes internationally around the world. It was just such a nightmare.
It was, so see, we've got such a good flow. It was something that we observed over time, obviously. It was always a risk for the business. It was always a challenge for the business to continue that. And at scale, it became even more impossible. It just became too big a task, essentially. And, a good problem to have, the demand for the brand and the growth was so strong. We actually, we were experiencing department stores and key accounts in the US saying, hey, for the first time, hey, can you not ship the boxes? We actually don't want the box. We just want the jewelry and we want the brand. The brand had
just sacrilegious to say to us. We were like, absolutely not.
So it had established. So we were shipping the boxes, and we did that, right? And even from a department store and scaling into that global market, we would send a box of jewelry like this and a container of boxes, because they would need to assemble it. So they were like, Samantha Will's the brand, it's 10 years old, it stands on its own. We love it, it's got the credibility, we know who you are now, it's got that customer following, the jewelry stands, it is who it is without the box. And I think that's probably the key message, is that the brand didn't need the box anymore. It kind of graduated into its own thing, and the handwriting now wasn't in the box, it was in the product and it was in the brand. So it was actually a really lovely journey that we went on, and we did a ceremony and we said goodbye to the boxes.
It was executed like we had to tell retailers. It was a sensitive topic.
It was controversial, it really was. And I think, but we also went back to customer, because it was something we sat with for a long time. It was a big decision, and we did talk to customer. We did survey, a core group of customers, and overwhelming feedback also from our customer service team was often ladies who were collecting. I'm sure, like many of yourselves, certainly me, were like, we've got so much, Samantha, please don't send us any more boxes. We've got like piles of boxes.
People were wanting to buy, like, do you have a
the
buyback
jewelry,
scheme?
But not
do
the
you
box.
have, and logistically, again, it creatively it's one thing, but then you're like, how do we implement this? And if you're going for that commerciality, how do you implement it on scale? And so people are like, can we just buy the ring, the Bohemian Butter ring without the box? But we'd costed everything to get, like, it just became too big.
It also meant that we could reinvest that back into the product. So what that next phase of brand looked like. So we talked a lot about the Bohemian luxury. That was essentially the first iteration of brand. And then when I kind of came along, I was like, actually, it was boho lux. Boho lux. It was a big thing at the moment.
Like Rachel Zoe, Sienna Miller.
Yeah,
vibe,
that boho lux. And you see it, the BB ring, the box, and she's a bit shabby chic, and it's gorgeous and bohemian. The customer had evolved, and the brand had evolved, and style had evolved as well. And so 10 years on, we switched that very simply. We switched the words, and we called it luxury bohemian. So we changed the hierarchy, and we really wanted to lean more into the luxury, but still have that baseline of the bohemian free spirit nature of the brand.
And that was through the marble
Exactly.
sale.
So we reinvested that packaging money back into the product. So the product became elevated, the execution of brand became elevated, and the point of sale. And it was really successful. I think we had a lot of buy-in from our retailers and certainly from the customer as well.
And I think too, like, when it sounds simple just to shift the hierarchy of terminology, but it was really significant in the creative direction of the brand, in how we would speak about the brand. And when you're making those decisions from a brand perspective, you do have to re-educate the customer in a way that feels authentic to them, and drip feeding them in a way that we've made that decision 6, 9, 12 months ago. But, we can't come out and be like, here's the new thing, you guys have to like that. We started switching the messaging on social media and just feeding it in, and it's so essential to take consumers on that journey. Otherwise you just kind of lose them, because they feel confused, and then they don't feel valued, because I gave you everything I had. I loved you as a brand, and then you've just forgotten about me. So we're really conscious of that as well.
Definitely. Yeah. It was scary to do. We thought long and hard about it, and it was a brave move for the business, but ultimately it propelled our next phase of growth and meant that we could go global without the boxes.
Yeah.
And I think, it was tough conversations. It was a tough decision. It was something we really agonised over time. Yeah. In that vein, I guess behind every success story is tough moments. So what are some of the tougher moments that come to mind for you in building the brand over time?
Oh gosh, I'm asked this a lot, and I have a few different answers, but I think the most important one that I apply to myself now, and I look back, and having written my memoir, my first book, and being able to look back at time and with hindsight. There was a time, it was probably around 2015, and again, the brand was in its next iteration of having its moment in the sun. It was not only the brand was booming, as an individual, I was kind of doing more projects that were alongside the brand. So I was named as the creative director of Yellow Glen as a separate entity. I was doing brand collaborations under me personally, not just the brand. So it was a very public facing role. And in addition to that, we had offices in Paris, we had Japan, we had Korea. We're everywhere. And I think being on a plane every 3 weeks was amazing and glamorous and all these things, but it just was a bit tiring. It was hard, and you couldn't have your feet on the ground for a lot of the time, quite literally. And I kind of liken it at that time to a Jenga tower, because you have all these different moving parts. And the thing with a Jenga tower is, when you move one pivotal piece, the whole tower falls down. And for me, that moment was my boyfriend at the time, of 3 years, we'd been in a relationship. I found out that he was cheating on me. And it was just, I just did not cope. I found messages on his phone that just revealed everything, and I just had no idea. I was completely blindsided by it. And my friend Freya would come over and kind of get me out of bed for a little bit to change my sheets and give me some food, and then I'd crawl back into bed, and I couldn't even function. So by the grace of having people like Lucinda and an incredible team around me that could keep the business going when I personally was not in a great place. But I think, when I look back on that time, I sat down with him when I was kind of able to, when you have to ask a question, but once you ask it, once the answer said, you can't unhear it. So everyone's like, yeah. So I knew there was a question that I had to ask, and it took every ounce of courage of me to ask that. And I sat down in front of him and said, how long has this affair been going on? And he looked at me and he said, which one? And I was like, well, how many have there been? And he said, at least 8. Oh my God. And yeah, exactly. As abhorrent and as awful as that behaviour was and is, it was in my reply to him that I really, really look back on that now, and I turned to him, I said, please don't leave me. And when I look at my career to that point, and even to this point, I was 100% about women's empowerment. I'm about supporting women. I'm about fighting the good fight and giving women opportunity. We're band together. I'm about women, and all that comes back to self-worth. Let's build our self-worth to build net worth. I'm all about that professionally. So my professional self-worth was up here, was at 100%. But when I look back on that girl sitting in front of him being, please don't leave me, my personal self-worth was down here. And as with life and the path of life, we don't get to see what's up on our path ahead. But I think I was put into that situation because what was up on my path ahead required my personal self-worth and my professional self-worth to be in alignment. And that was what I was put into that kind of dark time to do. And it was really hard. And I think oftentimes I then had to fly back to Australia. I was shooting these magazine covers that were in contracts that I had. I was doing a lot of public facing stuff with Spring Racing Carnival. And I would set my alarm. I had to show up on set, and I would set my alarm for an hour before I actually had to wake up. And I would just cry. I would just be in the shower, just on the ground, just sobbing. Because I was like, if I can get as many tears out now, that'll make me a more professional on set. And then I would go to set, do the job because I didn't want to let other people down. And if I had to break down, I would go to the bathroom, cry profusely, come back, beg hair and makeup to fix it up and keep going. That's the human side of anything we do, whether it's a brand, whether it's a career, whether it's life. You know, and especially as women, we're kind of juggling all these things in the background, and we're still expected to have to show up when we can. So share that story because it's a reality, and I also share it because it's so important to have good people around you. Like, no one would have known that, I don't think, at the time publicly, because the brand kept going and we kept doing things. But yeah, so I think, and that's with Of Golden Dust, I think that was really important to me to write that parallel, because so often we just see what Instagram wants us to see, and it's not the case. I'm so glad I'm not in that anymore, but it took me a long time to align that self-worth.
Yeah.
So
I think it also comes back to life, and I suppose when you talk about your name being the brand and so intrinsically linked.
Yes.
And I think that the strategy, structure, people, process that we have to put
in
in the brain, right? It's burned in right here.
Yeah.
The strategy comes from your strategic vision. The structure, the people, and the process that underlays that really enabled the business to keep going during that time. Obviously, we had the relationship where you had the candor and the trust to tell me what was going on straight away, and it was like, we've got this.
They did. They literally, she's like, I've got this, don't even worry.
Don't worry about it. Do your thing. Business is going to keep businessing. And we did. We rolled through, and you're so right. People didn't know what was going on. It was a shock.
Yeah.
But I think that talks to, which we'll speak to later, is the importance of that creative commercial relationship, but also as a commercial leader, ensuring that creative can keep rolling. How do you see that creative now in life, in your new life? Post Samantha Wills, what does that mean to you now, creativity?
It's so weird to post Samantha Wills, because Samantha Wills to me is a brand. I was like, is that even my name? Do I get to own that? Like, even when we had the business, I was SW, the brand was Samantha Wills. And I think when I made the decision to close the Samantha Wills business, not the brand, it became this identity challenge then, because I'm like, well, who am I if I'm not Samantha Wills jewelry designer? It was so intrinsically linked to that. And I think even in my adult life, I didn't know who I was. So the last few years have definitely been a journey on, one, rediscovering that, and two, getting back to true inherent creativity to me. So to me, creativity at this stage is being curious about things. It's about trying new things. And I think with the jewelry business, that once was my hobby. Mel and I had an apartment in Kensington together, and the whole dining table was just full of jewelry. Mel was making hats at the time, and we just loved it. We'd sell down at Bondi markets, and then that became the thing, and it just got so bigger, and it's what I wanted. As I said, I'm a commercial creative. I wanted it to go international, but by the end of that 15-year journey, I designed 12,000 pieces of jewelry. And David Jones was like, right, we need another 50 pairs of earrings under $99. So you get this matrix, and you're designing like a crazy person, because you just have to fill this matrix. And all that said, it's what I wanted, but creatively, I was just like, yeah, is this what I do now? And I think as a creative, probably 13 years into that journey, I started to just feel a bit numb and a bit empty, and it wasn't an unusual feeling to me. I think I was creative block, it happens, you kind of push through, it'll pass. So then you design another 1,000 pieces and you can keep going. And you're like, oh, 6 months, 12 months in, it hasn't passed. And it probably took me 2 years, and it felt like I didn't even know that I could close the business, to be honest, because I never so modestly named it Samantha Wills. So I'm like, all right, well, this is my lot in life. It's going well. There's about 50 people who are in this entity. It's not just me. So I just suck it up, buttercup, and that's just what we do. When my business partner said to me, he knew that I wasn't feeling it, and he's like, you need to make a decision. Either you move back to Australia and get closer to the team, either we move the design team over to New York to be with you, because my goal was to not be in an aeroplane every 3 weeks, because I felt like it was hindering my personal relationships in every continent that I held one. And so he's like, if we can eliminate that issue, and if you want to move back, so they were kind of, but he's like, whatever you want to do, and that was in his entity of being the kind of business partner support. He's like, we'll support what you want to do. And so I went upstate in New York to this retreat, Omega. It's very idyllic up in the rolling hills, and was in the dinner hall, and then my cabin was kind of over here, and my business partner Jeff had sent an email saying the business is at a crossroads, and essentially what I just explained to you, saying whatever you want to do, we will support that. And so I knew I had to make a decision, and I thought it was like, all right, we're going to move the design team to New York. I thought that was the solution. And so I'm walking back to my cabin, and I look down, I read the email, it says business is at a crossroads, and then I look up and I'm physically standing at this fork in the road at an actual crossroads on this campus. And I kid you not, when I put my hand on my heart and I just heard this voice, it was like, I felt this voice, and he's like, it's time to close. And that was it. That's all they said. It's time to close. And I looked around, there was no one standing near me. And I was like, it's time to close. It was like the first time I'd ever thought it. And this crossroads that I was standing at, there was this kind of bark chip rose garden, veggie garden to the right, which the right being the creative side, and the left was this heavier road around campus. It was the main road. You could see where it was going. It was lined with these really heavy pine trees. And the logical path to take in that moment is the left. And I started walking the right. And there was a bookshop on campus, and I went in, and as many books as this, like there was a lot of books kind of screaming at you, and there was this one book that just kind of caught my attention, which was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And I was like, and I'm a spiritual person, I was like, I'm going to need a sign. This is like affects much more than just myself. I'm going to need a sign. So I'm flicking through and reading, and it's all about overcoming fear and exploring curiosity and creativity. I was like, hey, that's good, but I'm going to need a bigger sign. Turned the page, and she'd done an interview with singer-songwriter Tom Waits, and in it he said, as artists we take ourselves so seriously when all we're doing is making jewellery for the inside of people's minds. Oh, wow. And I was like, okay, like, yeah. And I was like, maybe I'm meant to be writing. And around this time there'd been interest in writing a book, and I was like, I'm not a writer. I kept denying. And I was like, okay, and that kind of all aligned. So, I held that decision. I didn't tell a soul, and I held it, and I was like, okay, every morning I wake up for 2 weeks, I'm going to pretend like I have closed the business, and I'm going to ask myself how I feel about it, not what I think about it, because I feel logically, if I was to run it through a logic filter, there was no logical reason to close that business. But I put my hand on my heart every morning. I was like, you don't have a business anymore. How does it feel? And it felt like the right thing to do, because my overarching with anything in life, in creativity, you cannot fake a feeling. You can talk yourself in and out of anything, but you cannot fake a feeling. Short story long, to circle back to your question.
Great story.
I think creativity to me now, I saw a Venn diagram the other day, and it was the ego wants to achieve, and the soul the soul is curious. And I don't think the ego is ego gets such a bad rap around things, and I think there's a time and place for ego. It keeps us, motivated and moving forward. But I think in my early career, my creativity was it was what can we achieve next? What awards can we win? Where are we opening retail? What are we doing? It's very much up here. And then I think I'm much more, I still want to achieve things. I think definitely in a different path, definitely doing writing and things, definitely much more so now, but I'm much more in the middle. So creativity to me is now an equal blend as a commercial creative between curiosity and achieving things, and it just feels like a much more calmer place to be. It served a purpose, in that 15-year journey with the SW Jewelry brand, but yeah, it's definitely more in the middle for me now, my creativity.
And I think you've always been, what I observed and loved and enjoyed within the brand was that storytelling element. And I remember always being so admiring your ability to write and your ability to storytell through different mediums. Mm-hmm. I also remember about a year before you closed, sitting across, you talk about maybe no one knew. I've told you before, but it just popped into my head as you were saying it. Before we closed, we were sitting we had all this joy all across the tables, and we were like, yep, winner, no, doggy, yep, winner, putting the range together. Yeah, so doggy means as in like it's a dog, no one's going to buy it.
It's not going to sell.
We critique the range, which we wouldn't be, obviously we're also building up the creative. We do it in a very nice way. I remember Samantha sitting there and kind of just like taking this kind of strange breath and then putting her hand in her head and going to me, she looks at me, she goes, I just can't design another piece of jewellery.
I was like, it's burning me.
And at that moment, and I could see her just being so exhausted. Like she was exhausted by it. And at that moment, I was like,
shit.
Yeah, and it's probably, New York's off the table, I reckon. But, also parallel to that, what we were seeing was Samantha being creative in other ways. I think that never, just because you kind of exhausted jewelry creativity piece, you absolutely accelerated in other areas. It's a surprise to me to see that talent come through now creatively with you. And so I admire it so much every time you come out with something new, a new book, a new project. And another part of something that you're working on is bringing out creativity with business leaders. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's really interesting with what you're working on as well.
Yeah, definitely with the work with the Samantha Wills Institute, and I talk about creativity a lot as it relates to, obviously, paints and pottery wheels and traditional creativity. We talk about it a lot in business, but I do think creativity as a whole is it's life. I mean, every decision we make, we're creating something. We're creating conversation. We're creating a home. We're creating relationships, careers. So, you know, I guess at this part in my journey, I'm for collaborators along the way that help me realize my vision and my dream, which is a different commercial outcome when you're an individual versus having a product brand. But I guess I think it's interesting if you answer this question, because it's like, you know, as someone who comes in with a creative undertone, but you have a commercial mindset and you have a commercial requirement to businesses and shareholders and stakeholders, what do you look for in a creative, or be it a creative founder or a creative director? Like, where do you see potential, or what process are you like, oh, that's a good person for me, that'll be compatible for me to work with?
I think compatible is a really good word. I think it's a chemistry, it's creative chemistry, and I think that I've always found myself in roles working for owner operator, small business kind of dynamic, where it is one-on-one and it's very direct. So I think it's certainly a chemistry piece. You need to really to like each other.
You're spending more time together than, it's
you
serious.
need to meet them, you need to try it on for size, and you need to really hit it off. And I think that that's probably fundamentally the core thing I would look for in a creative. I'm friends with you.
Thank you.
And I still have really rich relationships with anyone that I've worked for or a business that I've run for them. And I think that's testament to the fact that they're not just choosing me, I'm choosing them. So I think that needs to be really authentic and sit well. So that's certainly a requirement.
And I think taking both the well, I know for me, like, what can we achieve together? So it's like, you know, obviously I've got my vision for the brand or whatever it is I'm working on, and then, you know, you've got your desires and goals, but like, what can we do together that we probably couldn't do separately?
Definitely.
Is a big
I could never be a designer, but I'm very creative.
You're good at design, like
but I've got enough. I can develop something from here. I love ChatGPT because it does the heavy, and then it sounds like a robot, but it's a baseline. And then I can go in and change the 30%, and it's great.
That's a good way to put it.
Whereas, but I would never write me a blah blah blah. I would send that out. But if I give it a prompt, it's kind of in a strange way how it works with a
it's like shaping
creative.
Something.
If I give a commercial creative, they might give me something that is 70% there, and I'm like, yes, this is great, but we need more of this, and that's kind of where the magic happens, is a collaboration.
That's a really good point.
I think it's, you know,
some of the most popular statement styles of earrings, and I forget their names, but I know the earrings. Lucinda putting two elements together and coming to me and being like, I think these two elements have different trend values. Let's try that. And then I would kind of go to the kitchen and whiz it up and come back to her, and then she'd be like, this is like, so it really was at the end.
You're my ChatGPT.
I am your ChatGPT. That's sweet. What a hollow statement. But it really was that partnership, and I think I just feel so lucky because as creatives, and I think Australia is so creatively rich. In the Samantha Wills Institute world, so many people are, you know, where do I find a good business partner, a good general manager, a good MD? And I just feel so fortunate to work with someone who respects the process and respects the creative journey so much with Lucinda. And as I said, like, she's such a huge integral part of the commercial success of Samantha Wills. So we wanted to thank you guys so much for being here tonight and listening to our chatter. This is literally how we chat when we're talking business. We are here tonight to obviously launch a little book that I wrote, Marigold's Magic Stars. And you know, before we open up to questions, I just wanted to chat very briefly about that. But it's essentially my childhood story. I want to give young readers the information that their creativity is important. As I said at the start, I think so often creativity has been pushed to the bohemian or the creative, starving artist archetype. And I really wanted this story. It's about a little girl who is creative, and her friends are very good at maths and science, and their report cards say that they're smart and intelligent. Her report card says she has a very creative mind, so she doesn't think she's smart. And she kind of goes on this quest and surrounds herself with her mum and her aunties and these incredible women in her life to learn that you can't spell smart without art. And I hope that tonight's conversation really does prove the meeting of the smart and the art and what that can achieve. And in the book, in Marigold's Magic Stars, her intuition and her inspiration is represented by stars. I wanted to have that kind of vehicle for young readers to see what that is and the importance of that. And we really want them to take away from that there is a vocation if you want to pursue it. So often in film you see storylines like, you know, we wanted our daughter to be a lawyer, but she's enrolled in art school, and it's like the worst outcome in the whole world. So I did an interview the other day, and the interviewer said, yeah, children hear with their hearts. And I was like, wow, that was so powerful, because, you know, if we're having those conversations or telling a 6-year-old, you know, get your head out of the clouds, stop daydreaming, they're going to think of that as wrong. Whereas that is where the magic happens. That is where creative problem solving comes in, where ideas come to us. So I really just wanted to reinforce that with young readers. And that is, without giving the whole story away, I'll leave you on a cliffhanger with Marigold's Magic Stars. That is the purpose behind the book. But it's had a great response. We're probably halfway through this book tour. And, you know, even adults that have read it, we've had women calling in tears that, you know, it spoke to them and spoke to that connection that they've kind of strayed from. So I thank you guys for being here tonight. I think you all get a book in your ticket price, so we will do a book signing in a sec. But we wanted to open the floor up if anyone had any questions. It's quite rare to have, you know, you probably hear me at different events telling the same stories over and over, but to have a true commercial strategist here, if anyone's got any questions, please shout out. You can come grab us later, or yeah.
I'm just curious, so when it came to, you know, after the decision had been...
I knew we'd get questions.
Yeah.
About
Everyone line your questions up, make them sharp.
I love how she's like, it was Lucinda.
You did want to, you said, you know, you wanted, it was important to include. So what was the sort of dialogue? How did you start to prepare and have the conversations around this is why? Like, what were your stories around that?
I think
Yes.
it was an announcement.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, if we're going to disrupt or going to be a shock in a way too, and we anticipated that, I think I would make the announcement first, like personally, and then the
She was
brand
the
would
core
back
brand
it.
voice. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'd move it to a brand voice. So it'd be like from Samantha and then, from SW and then from the brand. But I think we also was at a time, you know, if we tried to do wooden boxes now, I don't think the sustainability angle would allow you to do that. So I think we were feeling pushback from that. We did use regeneration in the wood that was being grown in India. We would replant and things, but it got so ginormous that we really couldn't keep up with that.
The scale.
I was managing the brand sales at the time for a long time for all this. I feel that the messaging came from the sales team also through to the buyers and the owners of the beautiful boutiques stocking our brand, and getting their buy-in and their understanding through Samantha's initial messaging, and relaying that in a soft way of an evolution of how the brand was going to sit going forward. So yes, that's how we are. Instead of yes, keep our collector boxes. There's still some here if you want them, but basically I think them also seeing the excitement of a new direction of how the brand packaging, there's beautiful the labelling, the logoing, the gold. And as the consumer, who was also growing with us, was seeing that, they were excited by it.
Yeah.
It was our job to place that excitement onto them, which they then placed on them.
But Rachel and her team were making calls. So we had 200 stockists that needed to be called and had that conversation. Each was probably an hour conversation. Like it was meticulously in a way that...
I think we also bought into you, Samantha, because having worked for you, and I remember the day that you put on Facebook and you were selling on Marketplace your coffee table. That was like a box.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And this change coming.
So Rachel and I are personal friends on Facebook, and I was selling a coffee table on Marketplace, which was the same carving. Yeah.
This is the same carving. There's change coming.
Yeah. Change is afoot.
I know, it's afoot, and it was big for me because I had every box in every shape, every size. I had the stick box, I had the whole lot, and it was big as a consumer, but also as someone that bought into not only your brand but into you.
Part of the story. People still talk about that now. But it was just really interesting, that second iteration of brand, and it involved a lot more countries. And it is perhaps a big part of the story within Australia, but it graduated into this brand which didn't need the box. From a customer perspective, I learnt the most strategy in its process, kind of in motion, with working with Samantha and Jeff, and being so customer centric in that, and that the customer never felt like they were the last to know. We led with customer first in those decisions. So,
and we would speak with, not to.
Exactly.
To them,
and it was part of the journey. So we were like, this is coming. It will happen at this point. And also a great sort of call to action for the customer. if you want a box,
Yeah.
you're
So
going to
we'll
need
probably
to
give
buy
a
into the
6 month
we
heads
gave
up that
notice.
this is phasing out.
Buy into the brand now, so it kind of created that demand. It was a good marketing tack as well, to also then build, you know, some suspense around the brand relaunch.
Yeah.
Slight build, which you may have touched on before. We both worked in retail, obviously, and I would almost say what Samantha really nailed, which was before the boxes even came along, was customer service. So when Samantha, once the jewellery started rolling in from China and wherever, and once it started going out to her client customers, if something was faulty or if it broke, immediate replacement.
Yeah.
No
Things
question.
no
Yeah.
question asked. No question asked. So that foundation was really kind of laid from the very beginning. It's innate to Samantha.
Yes.
We all know already that I want the best for everyone.
Yeah.
So, and that was at a time where I was working at David Jones at the time, and it was like someone would come in with something faulty, and I'd be like, the customers, the returns that we see nowadays did not exist
Yeah.
at all. So that relationship with her started from the very, very, very beginning. Before even, it was massive.
Ultimately, I know made up a fake entity that would do customer service. So I was big on customer service. Yeah, I even had a fake, Renee was her name. Yeah.
So I think that played a big part. It built trust.
Yeah.
So when the changes,
Yeah.
Well,
inevitably,
you're right, and to have that foundation of consumer relationships. So even when I talked about how I demolished the brand, like that was based on consumer trust, and we had that relationship, which is because I think once the storm comes along, if you don't have those roots in the ground, no matter what it is, like brand, career, life, you just get washed over. So and I think, to talk to that, we launched at a very 2004. So by 2008, when Facebook came in, Facebook pages came in, like we were kind of an early adapter as a brand on social media. And that's kind of where that consumer real connection started back when. So it was good timing as well. So we're lucky. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions?
I do.
Oh yes.
Hello.
Is there an archive of everything you design, Simon?
Oh, do you know? I'm actually going through my storage unit at the moment, and I've got digital hard drives in there. And I've got a digital of most things, but truly in 2004, like Mel and I don't even have a photo of us at the markets, and it's such a big part of the story because we had digital cameras, but now we're like, let's take 20 photos in case we didn't get the shot. Back then it was like, we weren't uploading it. I don't know. So I don't have a lot from those early days. I definitely kept all the catalogs and things like that, but yeah, and I think by the end, and I was just so exhausted with Cinder's point, like by the end we just need to close, like.
I remember you doing a big purge as well. I was like, maybe don't throw everything out.
smart.
I feel like you're going to regret this later.
I do regret it.
I kept
do.
all mine. Yeah. I've got such beautiful memories to every piece and every collection, and I didn't throw anything out. I got it all for my daughters. I'm going to give it to my,
I know. One production house we worked with actually was had a big Samantha Wills department, and sometimes she sends me she's got a whole archive there. So if I wanted to, I probably could call up maybe 60% of it if we needed to build an archive. But we are talking about doing a Samantha Wills coffee table book with a complete archive of the brand. So that could be an upcoming project. So yeah.
Just that I can't remember what I had for breakfast.
I know.
It would have been copied a lot too.
It was, yeah. And people are still replicating it on eBay. And I think, talk to the boxes just for a second. Like at the time, they served a purpose because China as manufacturing are really good at what they're really good at. India as artisans are really good at wooden carving, but you try and get China to replicate an Indian hand-carved wooden box, and it's absolutely impossible. And you try and get India to make a Bohemian Bardo ring in the same way that we were making them. So essentially in those early days when counterfeit really was a problem, we were like, if it's not in a box, it's not an authentic Samantha Wills piece. So it really saved us in a way that it served many functions in business, I think. But now anything on eBay is,
But I just can't. I've had the privilege of the book, and I can't recommend it enough for any young creative person that you have in your family. Sam has the most beautiful signature, and she will be signing books after.
Indeed.
And, just kind of the way she's written the story is to make creatives feel like it is okay, but also how not being great at maths and science does come back into it sometimes.
It does.
And it's, you know, it's very special, it's very feel good, and they just don't write books like that anymore.
Thank you, Jane.
It's got a lovely feel about it. So
Thank you so
thank
much.
you all so much.
Could you guys put your hands together for Lucinda, because I'm so grateful that she is here. Thank you. Thank you.